The station hung in the darkness between stars, a massive wheel of metal and light called Bastion 7. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports. Today marked 800 years since the Treaty of Silent Stars, and beings from across the galaxy had come to remember the day the Great War ended. General Hannah Choi stood at the observation window of her quarters, watching the ships arrive. She wore her dress uniform, dark blue with silver stars on her shoulders. At 47, she carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who had spent 3 decades in military service. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes studied each vessel that approached the station. She had been named Keeper of the Old Ways, guardian of Earth's military history. Her job was to remember what humanity had done during the war, to maintain the weapons and knowledge that had forced the Galactic Collective to sign the peace treaty. Most humans thought of her as a historian now, someone who managed museums and archives. They did not understand that her real work was making sure humanity never forgot how to fight. A chime sounded at her door. Admiral Bora Kim entered without waiting for permission. The old woman moved slowly, leaning on a cane, but her eyes were still sharp. At 134 years old, she was the last human alive who had actually fought in the war. Medical technology kept her body working, but nothing could erase the weight of those memories. "You should not have come," Hannah said. "The journey is too hard on you." Bora made a dismissive sound. "I survived worse than a long ship ride. Besides, someone needs to remind these fools what the treaty actually means." She settled into a chair with a grunt. "I read the guest list. War Master Krell will be here." Hannah nodded. She had seen the name, too. Krell was a military commander of the Galactic Collective's forces, a being who had never experienced real war. He had been born 50 years after the treaty, grew up hearing stories about how the mighty collective had been forced to negotiate with primitive humans. She knew his type. He thought the peace had lasted because humanity was weak, not because they were terrifying. "He will make trouble," Bora said. "His kind always does." "Then we will handle it," Hannah replied, "as we always do." The ceremony began 3 hours later in the station's Great Hall. Thousands of beings filled a massive space, representing every member species of the Galactic Collective. Humans were a small group near the front, just 50 people to represent their entire civilization. Hannah stood with Ambassador Miho Park, a thin man with gray hair who had spent 40 years maintaining diplomatic relations with the Collective. "Stay calm no matter what happens," Miho whispered to her. "We cannot afford incidents today." Supreme Archon Veldar spoke first, a tall being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His voice echoed through the hall as he talked about peace, cooperation, and the bright future ahead. He spoke of the treaty as a gift the Collective had given to humanity, a chance for them to join galactic civilization. Hannah kept her face neutral, but inside she felt cold anger. The Supreme Archon had not been alive during the war. He did not know what humanity had done to earn their place at the table. He thought humans had begged for peace. When it was humanity's turn to speak, Admiral Bora Kim walked slowly to the stage. Every eye in the hall watched her. She was a legend, one of the few who had commanded fleets during the war's final year. She reached the podium and stood silent for a long moment, looking out at the crowd. 800 years ago, humanity and the Collective nearly destroyed each other, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall. We learned something important in that war. We learned that peace is not weakness. Peace is a choice that strong people make because they understand the cost of war. She paused, letting her words sink in. The treaty is held for 8 centuries because both sides remember what happens when it breaks. I hope we never forget. She turned and walked back to her seat. The hall remained quiet. Then War Master Krell stood up. "A question for the Admiral," he called out. His voice was loud and aggressive. "Does humanity still possess the weapons that ended the war? Or have 800 years of peace made you forget how to fight?" The hall erupted in whispers. Ambassador Miho Park stood quickly. This is not appropriate for her. "I will answer," Hannah said, her voice cutting through the noise. She stepped forward, looking directly at Krell. "Humanity remembers everything. Every weapon, every tactic, every reason we fought. The question is not whether we have forgotten. The question is whether you have learned. Krell's face showed anger, but Counselor Thresh, one of the moderate voices in the collective government, quickly stood and changed the subject. The ceremony continued, but the tension remained thick in the air. That evening, Hannah returned to her quarters tired and frustrated. Captain Jaiwin Lee, the young commander of her security detail, did a sweep of the rooms before letting her enter. "All clear, General," Jaiwin said. "I will be right outside if you need anything." Hannah nodded and locked the door behind her. She removed her uniform jacket and sat at her desk, pulling up reports on her computer. There was always work to do, always some piece of military history to catalog or some old weapon system to review. She worked for 2 hours before exhaustion caught up with her. She moved to her bedroom, changed into sleep clothes, and laid down. The station hummed quietly around her, the sound of thousands of beings living and working in the darkness of space. Hannah never heard the door open. She never saw the figure that entered her room, moving silently in the darkness. The weapon made no sound. One moment she was sleeping, and the next moment she was gone. Captain Jaiwin Lee found her in the morning. The young woman stood frozen in the doorway, staring at General Hannah Choi's body. Then she hit the emergency alert and sealed the room. Within minutes, the news spread through Bastion 7 like fire. The humans gathered in shocked silence. Admiral Borakim looked at Hannah's covered body and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had seen this before, 800 years ago. She knew what came next. Ambassador Miho Park tried to manage the situation, demanding answers from the collective authorities. They promised a full investigation. They said it was probably a rogue faction, someone who wanted to disrupt the peace. But Captain Jaiwin Lee had been trained by General Choi herself. She knew how to look for evidence, how to follow trails that others missed. She spent 3 days going through security footage and electronic records. What she found made her blood run cold. The assassination had been planned at the highest levels of the Galactic Collective. They had killed General Hannah Choi to test humanity's resolve. They wanted to see if 800 years had made humans weak and forgiving. Jaiwin brought the evidence to Admiral Bora Kim. The old woman studied it carefully, then looked up at the young captain. Her eyes held a terrible sadness. "Send a message to Earth." Bora said quietly, "Tell them to open the vaults. Tell them the treaty is dead." Jaiwin hesitated. "Admiral, are you sure? Once we start this." "They killed Hannah because they thought we had forgotten." Bora interrupted. The message reached Earth 12 hours after Admiral Bora Kim sent it. 3 simple words that changed everything. "Open the vaults." Commander Hyun Kong stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, watching as ancient systems came back to life. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for 8 centuries. Computer screens glowed with data that no living human had seen outside of classified training. Around him, military officers moved with quick efficiency, pulling up files and activating communication networks that had been sleeping since the treaty was signed. Hyun was 42 years old and had spent his entire career in human intelligence. His job had always been to prepare for a war that everyone said would never come. He had agents planted throughout collective space, ordinary humans who lived normal lives while quietly watching and listening. Now it was time to wake them all up. "How many assets do we have active?" asked General Tae-Jin Woo, the overall commander of Earth's military forces. He was a broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples, someone who had trained his whole life for this moment while hoping it would never arrive. 4,312 confirmed agents, Hyun replied. Another 6,000 possibles who don't know they're working for us. And the Ghost Protocol gives us access to every major collective system. Tae-Jin nodded slowly. What about the shipyards? Already building. They never stop, actually. We've been constructing and mothballing ships for centuries, just in case. Hyun pulled up a display showing the outer solar system. Red dots marked hidden facilities in the Kuiper Belt, far beyond where anyone would think to look. We have 300 ships ready to deploy immediately. Another 1,000 will be ready within 6 months. In another facility on the moon, Dr. Yuna Song was having a similar conversation. She ran the research division called Project Exodus, humanity's backup plan, if everything went wrong. The project had two goals: create weapons that could win a war, and create ships that could save humanity if the war was lost. "The Supreme Council wants to know our capabilities," said her assistant, a young scientist named Dr. Minjiu. "What should I tell them?" Yuna looked at the screen showing her life's work. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that could stop anything the collective had, and hidden in deep space, a fleet of generation ships that could carry 10 million humans to another galaxy if Earth fell. "Tell them we're ready," Yuna said. "Tell them humanity hasn't been sleeping for 800 years. We've been preparing." On Bastion 7, Ambassador Mio Park stood before the Galactic Council and demanded answers. His usual diplomatic calm was gone, replaced by cold fury. Behind him stood Admiral Borakim and Captain Jaiwin Lee, both in full military uniform. "You promised an investigation," Miho said. "It has been 4 days. Where are your findings?" Supreme Archon Veldar looked uncomfortable. Around him, the various counselors shifted in their seats. "These things take time, Ambassador. We are being thorough." "Thorough?" Miho repeated. "We have been thorough as well. We have evidence that General Choi's assassination was ordered by members of this council. We have communication records. We have payment transfers. We have everything." The council chamber erupted in noise. Counselor Thresh, who had always been friendly to humanity, looked shocked. "That is a serious accusation, Ambassador. Do you have proof?" Captain Jaiwin Lee stepped forward and projected the evidence onto the main display. Everyone in the chamber could see it. Messages between War Master Krell and his subordinates, planning the assassination. References to testing human resolve and removing obstacles to expansion. War Master Krell stood up, his face twisted in anger. "This is a fabricated, human lies designed to—" "The encryption is yours," Jaiwin interrupted. "The communication channels are yours. The payment came from your personal military accounts. This is not fabrication. This is fact." The chamber fell silent. Miho stepped forward again. "Humanity demands that Supreme Archon Veldar and War Master Krell stand trial for murder and conspiracy. You have 30 days to comply. If you refuse, the Treaty of Silent Stars is void." Veldar's face hardened. "You cannot threaten the collective. We are done with threats," Admiral Borakim said quietly. Her old voice somehow carried through the entire chamber. "You killed Hannah Choi because you thought we were weak. You thought 800 years made us forget. You were wrong." 3 weeks later, War Master Krell made his move. He gathered a battle fleet of 500 ships and moved them toward Earth. It was supposed to be intimidation, a show of force to make humans back down. He did not expect Admiral Borakim to be waiting for him. The human fleet that met him consisted of just 20 ships. Krell laughed when he saw them. 20 against 500. The humans had gone insane. "All ships, prepare to fire," Krell ordered. "We'll destroy them in one volley, and then—" His weapons officer interrupted. "Sir, their ships are doing something strange. Energy readings are off the charts." On the bridge of the human flagship Remembrance, Admiral Borakim sat in her command chair and smiled. "Show them," she said. "Show them what we've been building." The 20 human ships activated systems that the collective had never seen before. Electromagnetic pulse weapons that could shut down electronics from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Energy shields that made their ships look like ghosts on sensors. And most importantly, precision targeting that could hit a specific system on an enemy ship without destroying the whole vessel. In 3 minutes, it was over. All 500 Krell ships hung dead in space. Their power systems shut down, their weapons offline, their crews alive but helpless. Not a single shot had been fired by the collective fleet. Borakim opened a communication channel that every ship in Krell's fleet could hear. "This is Admiral Borakim of the Human Defense Force. Your ships are disabled but intact. Your crews are alive. We could have killed all of you. Remember that. Remember what humanity chooses to do and what we choose not to do." She closed the channel and turned to her crew. "Send recovery ships. Get their people to safety. Then tow their vessels back to collective space and leave them there. The message was clear across the galaxy. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had gotten better at it. Colonel Daehoon Shin watched the footage from a hidden base in the Outer Territories. He commanded the Special Operations Group, the soldiers who did the jobs that nobody talked about. He had just received his orders. Recovered the Prometheus array from Research Station Omega-9. The station was supposed to have been destroyed centuries ago as part of the treaty, but humanity had secretly kept it running, kept improving the weapons inside it. The Prometheus array could trigger stars to go supernova. It was the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. "We leave in 6 hours," Daehoon told his team. "The collective doesn't know the station exists. Let's keep it that way until we need it." On Earth, Commander Hyun Kong sat in his office and activated the Ghost Protocol. All across collective space, his agents received coded messages. Some were engineers who began sabotaging communication networks. Humanity struck at dawn across 17 sectors simultaneously. The collective military command woke up to reports of attacks everywhere at once, and nobody could understand how humans were moving so fast. Captain Jaiwan Lee led the first strike. Her target was the Imperial War Academy on the planet Turthos, where the collective trained its officers. Intelligence said the evidence of General Choi's assassination order was stored in the Academy's secure archives. Krell had been arrogant enough to keep records of his crime. Jaiwan's ship, the Remembrance, dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the Academy. 12 smaller vessels appeared with her, carrying 200 Special Forces soldiers. The Academy's defense systems activated immediately, but they were designed to stop large fleets, not precision strikes. "All teams, deploy now," Jaiwan ordered. Drop pods launched from the ships, carrying soldiers and powered armor down to the planet's surface. The pods moved too fast for the defensive weapons to track accurately. Within minutes, human soldiers were on the ground. Lieutenant Sorahan was in the first pod to land. She was 26 years old, the daughter of a diplomat who had spent her whole life believing the peace would last forever. Her father had begged her not to join the military. Now she was leading a squad of mech pilots into combat. The Academy defenders opened fire as soon as the humans appeared. Energy weapons lit up the night sky. But the human mechs were faster and better armored than anything the collective expected. Sora's mech absorbed 3 direct hits while she returned fire with precision shots that disabled enemy weapons without killing the soldiers using them. "Push forward to the main building," Sora commanded. Her squad moved in formation, covering each other as they advanced. Collective soldiers tried to form a defensive line, but the humans went through them like they weren't there. Inside the Academy, Jaiwan and a team of intelligence officers reached the secure archives. Commander Hyun Kong had provided them with access codes stolen months ago by a Ghost Protocol agent. The doors opened without resistance. "Download everything," Jaiwan ordered. "We have 4 minutes before their reinforcements arrive." Her team worked quickly, copying files onto portable drives. They found exactly what they needed. Communication records showing War Master Krell discussing the assassination with Supreme Archon Veldar himself. The collective's leader had known about the plan and approved it. "Got it," one of the officers said. "All files secured." "Everyone out now," Jaiwan commanded. Her team ran back to the extraction point where Sora's mechs were holding off increasingly desperate collective forces. The drop pods returned, pulling the humans back to their ships. 20 minutes after arriving, they were gone, leaving the Academy defenders confused and angry, but mostly alive. On the other side of collective space, Colonel Daehoon Shin was executing his own mission. Research Station Omega-9 floated in the darkness between star systems, hidden and forgotten by everyone except humanity. The station housed the Prometheus array, a weapon that could make stars explode. Daehoon's team approached the station in stealth ships that barely registered on sensors. They docked quietly and entered through maintenance airlocks. Inside, the station was exactly as humanity had left it 800 years ago, preserved and waiting. "Power up the array," Daehoon ordered the science team that accompanied him. "We need it operational in 6 hours." Dr. Min Ji-yu, the young cyber warfare expert, was part of Daehoon's team. While the others worked on the array, she had a different job. She connected her computer to the collective's military network and began her attack. The collective military used three main computer networks to coordinate their forces. Minji had spent years studying these systems, finding weaknesses, preparing viruses. Now she unleashed everything at once. In the collective central command, screens began going dark. Communication channels filled with static. Orders that were sent never arrived. Reports that came were corrupted and unreadable. 3 entire sector grids shut down completely, leaving hundreds of military bases blind and unable to coordinate. What is happening? Supreme Archon Veldar demanded from his command center. Why are we losing communications? It's the humans, Archon, one of his technical officers reported. They're inside our systems. They've been inside our systems. Some of this code has been dormant for years, just waiting to activate. Veldar felt cold fear settle in his chest. Years. The humans had been preparing this for years, maybe centuries. The Ghost Protocol was real. It was more extensive than anyone had imagined. War Master Krell refused to believe what was happening. It doesn't matter, he insisted. We still have more ships, more soldiers, more planets. Numbers will win this war. He gathered his forces for what he called a decisive battle. 4,000 ships assembled at the Helix Nebula, a strategic point that controlled access to the collective's core worlds. If the humans wanted to advance, they would have to come through here. Krell was certain his overwhelming numbers would crush them. Admiral Borakim accepted the challenge. She brought 300 ships to meet him. Krell laughed when his sensors showed the human fleet size. 300 ships against 4,000? They're insane. Admiral, should we wait for reinforcements? His second officer asked. No, Krell said. We'll destroy them now and end this farce. The two fleets faced each other across empty space. Krell gave the order to advance, and his massive armada began moving forward in a wall of steel and weapons. Borakim sat calmly in her command chair. Activate combat protocols. Show them what 300 human ships can do. The human vessels spread out in a formation that looked random but wasn't. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, built with technology the collective had never seen. More importantly, every captain had studied the battles of the old war, had trained for decades, had learned from humanity's mistakes. They're in range, reported Commander Jinonam, who commanded the escort wing. He had developed a new fighting style called Deep Black, where ships hid in the empty spaces between stars and struck from unexpected angles. Permission to engage? Granted, Borakim said. All ships, fire at will. The Battle of the Helix Nebula lasted 6 hours. Krell's 4,000 ships came at the humans in waves, trying to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. But the human ships moved like dancers, never staying in one place, always shooting from unexpected angles. Their weapons were more accurate, their shields were stronger, and their tactics were centuries ahead of anything the collective knew. Commander Juno Nam's Deep Black doctrine proved devastatingly effective. His ships would disappear from sensors, drift in the darkness, then reappear right next to collective vessels and fire before vanishing again. The enemy never knew where the next attack would come from. Lieutenant Sorahan, now commanding a squadron of space fighters, led attack runs that broke apart collective formations. Her pilots flew with precision that seemed impossible, threading through enemy fire that should have killed them but never quite did. Krell watched in growing horror as his fleet fell apart. Ships exploded or went dark. War Master Krell stared at the tactical display in his private command room and felt rage burning through him. 3,000 ships lost. His reputation destroyed. The collective's military, looking weak, in front of the entire galaxy. All because of humans. They will pay, he whispered. If I cannot defeat their military, I will break their spirit. He activated his personal communication channel, bypassing the normal command structure. His most loyal officers appeared on the screen, people who owed their careers to him and would follow any order. New target priority, Krell said, human colonies. We will show them what happens when they challenge the collective. One of his officers hesitated. Sir, attacking civilians violates the rules of war. Even the old treaty prohibited. The treaty is dead, Krell snapped. And desperate times require desperate measures. Begin planning immediately. But War Master Krell had forgotten something important. Commander Hyun Kang's Ghost Protocol agents were everywhere, including in Krell's own command staff. Within an hour, Admiral Bora Kim knew exactly what Krell was planning. He's going after the colony on New Sol, Bora told her senior officers. Population 2 million, mostly civilians. He thinks hitting them will make a surrender. Captain Jaiwin Lee felt sick. We need to evacuate them. No time, Bora replied. His fleet is already moving, but we're not going to let him reach them. She turned to Commander Juno Nam. Take your Deep Black Fleet and get to New Sol first. Prepare a welcome for Krell. Juno saluted. He won't touch a single civilian. I promise you that. Admiral Bora Kim made another decision. Send a message on all channels, including civilian ones. I want everyone in the galaxy to hear this. She waited until the communication officers confirmed the channel was open. Then she spoke clearly and coldly. War Master Krell is planning to attack New Sol Colony and murder 2 million human civilians. We know his plans. We know his ship positions. We know everything. This message is for Krell personally. If you harm even one civilian, humanity will stop being merciful. We have shown restraint in this war. We have avoided killing when we could. But if you cross this line, we will show you what humanity is really capable of. Across the galaxy, beings watched the message. Some felt fear. Others felt hope. The conquered species within the collective began to wonder if humanity might actually win this war. Counselor Thresh watched the message from his office and immediately went to find Supreme Archon Veldar. He found the Archon in his chambers, looking older and more tired than Thresh had ever seen him. You must stop Krell, Thresh said without preamble. If he attacks those civilians, the humans will never forgive us. More importantly, every conquered species in the collective will see us as monsters. Veldar rubbed his face wearily. Krell no longer answers to me. He believes he is fighting for the collective survival. He is fighting for his ego. Thresh snapped. And he will destroy us all to preserve it. He leaned forward. I have support from 40% of the council. Enough to remove you from power if necessary. Order Krell to stand down or I will have no choice. Veldar sent the order, but Krell ignored it. His fleet continued toward New Sol, and there was nothing the Supreme Archon could do to stop it. Commander Juno Nam reached New Sol 3 hours before Krell's fleet arrived. He positioned his ships in the Deep Black Formation, scattered across thousands of kilometers of space, invisible to sensors. On the colony below, people went about their normal lives, unaware of the danger approaching. Lieutenant Sorahan was with Juno's fleet, commanding a mech unit station on New Sol surface. When she received word of Krell's target, she felt cold fury. Her own grandmother lived in the capital city below. All mechs, prepare for orbital defense, Sora ordered. If any enemy ships get past the fleet with a last line, we do not fail. When Krell's fleet arrived, they found what appeared to be an undefended colony. Krell smiled with satisfaction. All ships, target population centers. Fire on my command. Before he could give the order, Juno Nam's fleet appeared from nowhere. Ships materialized on every side of Krell's formation, weapons already firing. The surprise was total. Evasive action, Krell shouted, but his ships were packed too tightly together. They collided with each other, trying to maneuver. Juno's vessels picked them apart methodically, targeting engines and weapons, but deliberately avoiding life support systems. On the surface, Sora watched 3 enemy ships break through the defensive line and dive toward the colony. Her mech unit launched into the air using jump jets, intercepting the ships before they could fire on the city. Target their weapons arrays, Sora commanded. Her pilots fired with perfect accuracy, destroying the enemy guns before they could aim at civilians. The 3 ships crashed in empty fields outside the city, and rescue teams were already moving to pull out survivors. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, Krell had lost another 800 ships. Not a single shot had been fired at New Sol Colony. Not one civilian had been harmed. Juno Nam opened a communication channel directly to Krell's flagship, This is Commander Juno Nam of the Human Defense Force. You attempted to murder civilians. You failed. Now you answer to us." Before Krell could respond, Colonel Daehoon Shin's Special Forces team teleported directly onto Krell's flagship. The collective officers barely had time to draw weapons before they were disarmed and restrained. Daehoon himself found Krell on the bridge, trying to activate the ship's self-destruct. "I don't think so," Daehoon said, pulling Krell away from the controls. "You wanted to kill civilians to break our spirit. Instead, you're going to stand trial and face justice. That's what separates us from you." The news of Krell's capture spread across the galaxy within hours. Beings everywhere saw the footage of the human soldiers taking him alive, saw how they had protected civilians while still defeating a military force twice their size. Inside the collective, the fractures became breaks. Counselor Thresh formally called for a vote of no confidence in Supreme Archon Veldar. The council chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of species, many of whom had been conquered by the collective centuries ago. "The humans have shown us something important," Thresh said to the assembly. "They could have destroyed Krell's fleet with everyone aboard. They could have leveled his home planet in revenge. Instead, they captured him alive so he could face trial. They fight with honor we have forgotten." One of the conquered species representatives stood up. "Humanity has contacted us. They offer us freedom if we stand with them. Why should we continue to support a collective that sends its military to murder civilians?" "Because we are strong," shouted one of Krell's supporters. "Because we have always been strong." "We were strong," Thresh replied quietly. "Now we are just bullies who pick on those weaker than us. The humans remind us what real strength looks like. Strength is having the power to destroy your enemy and choosing not to. Strength is protecting the innocent even when it's harder than killing them." The vote was called. Supreme Archon Veldar was removed from power by a margin of 68%. The trial of War Master Krell took place on Bastion 7, the same station where General Hannah Choi had been murdered. Beings from across the galaxy came to witness it, filling every observation deck and watching on screens across 1,000 worlds. Krell stood in the prisoner's dock, his hands bound, his military decorations stripped away. He looked smaller now, diminished without his power and authority. Around him sat judges from neutral species, beings who had no connection to either humanity or the collective. Captain Jaiwen Lee presented the evidence she had recovered from the War Academy. Communication records, payment transfers, planning documents. Everything was laid out clearly for everyone to see. Krell had not just approved the assassination. He had planned it in detail, had selected the assassin personally, had paid for it from his own accounts. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" the lead judge asked. Krell stood silent for a long moment. Then he looked directly at the human section of the courtroom, where Admiral Borakim sat watching him with ancient, tired eyes. "I thought you were weak," Krell said quietly. 800 years of peace. I thought you had forgotten how to fight. I thought one death would make you surrender." He shook his head. "I was wrong about everything." The judges deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty of murder, conspiracy, and war crimes. Krell was sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote prison planet, where he would have decades to think about his mistakes. As guards led him away, Krell looked back at Admiral Borakim one last time. "You could have killed me," he said. "Why didn't you?" Borakim stood up slowly, leaning on her cane. "Because General Choi believed in justice, not revenge. We honor her memory by doing what she would have done." Supreme Archon Veldar's trial was shorter. He had known about the assassination plan and allowed it to happen. The judges found him guilty as well, sentencing him to 20 years imprisonment and permanent removal from any position of authority. With both leaders convicted, Counselor Thresh began the work of transforming the Galactic Collective into something new. The Galactic Republic was formed with representatives from every species, each having equal votes regardless of military strength or population size. Commander Hyun Kong attended the First Republic Assembly as an observer. He watched as species that had been conquered centuries ago finally had voices again. The Velthi, who had been enslaved for 400 years, voted to establish their own independent government. The collective would have crushed them for that. The Republic simply wished them well and offered trade agreements. "This is what we fought for," Hyun said to Dr. Minji, who stood beside him. "Not to conquer them, but to free them." Minji nodded. "My grandmother always said that humanity's greatest strength was knowing when to stop fighting. I never understood what she meant until now." On New Seoul Colony, Lieutenant Sora Han was being promoted to Admiral at the age of 26. She stood at attention while General Taejin Woo pinned the stars to her uniform. Her father watched from the audience, tears streaming down his face. He had begged her not to join the military, had believed peace would last forever. Now his daughter was a hero who had saved 2 million lives. The youngest admiral in human history, Taejin said as he stepped back to salute her. General Choi would be proud. Sora felt the weight of the stars on her shoulders. "I hope to honor her memory," she said quietly, "and make sure we never have to fight like this again." Her first assignment as admiral was overseeing the transition period, making sure that human forces withdrew peacefully as the Republic established its own defense force. It was harder than fighting had been. Soldiers who had been enemies weeks ago now had to learn to trust each other. Colonel Daehoon Shin returned to Research Station Omega 9 with a team of engineers. Their job was to dismantle the Prometheus array, the weapon that could destroy stars. Counselor Thresh had requested it as a show of good faith, and Admiral Bora Kim had agreed. "Are you sure about this?" one of the engineers asked as they began disconnecting the array's power systems. "This weapon won us the war." Daehoon shook his head. "The weapon didn't win the war. We did. Our training, our tactics, our willingness to fight for what was right. This thing is just a tool, and tools can be replaced." He watched as the array powered down for the last time. "Besides, we have the plans memorized. We can rebuild it if we ever truly need it. But I hope we never do." Dr. Yuna Song kept Project Exodus active despite the peace. The Generation ships remained hidden in deep space, supplied and maintained by automated systems. When questioned about it, she was unapologetic. "Hope is not a strategy," she told the Oversight Committee. "We hoped the first peace would last forever, and it lasted 800 years. This peace might last even longer. But if it doesn't, humanity will survive. That's my job, and I'm going to keep doing it." The committee couldn't argue with her logic. The Generation ships remained humanity's insurance policy, a promise that no matter what happened, some humans would endure. Commander Juno Nam wrote The New Military Doctrine for Humanity, a book that will be studied for generations. He called it Peace Through Memory, Strength Through Vigilance. The central principle was simple: never forget how to fight, but always remember why you shouldn't. "We are not warriors," he wrote in the introduction. "We are guardians. We protect the peace not by threatening war, but by being so prepared for it that no one dares to break the peace. We honor the fallen not by seeking revenge, but by making sure their sacrifices meant something." Every human military academy began teaching his doctrine. Future generations would learn that true strength was not about how much damage you could do, but about how much damage you could prevent. Ambassador Miho Park, who had spent 40 years maintaining the first peace, spent his final years helping build the second one. He traveled to every former collective world, helping establish the new Republic governments, mediating disputes, teaching young diplomats the skills he had learned over a lifetime. "The first peace failed because it was built on fear," he told his students. "The collective feared humanity's weapons, so they left us alone. But fear fades. People forget. This new peace is built on respect. They respect what we can do. But more importantly, they respect what we choose not to do. That kind of peace lasts." On every former collective core world, the memorials to General Hannah Choi were erected. Simple monuments of black stone with her name, dates, and a single quote she had once said: "Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is having the strength to resolve conflict without violence." Beings from across the galaxy came to visit these memorials. Some left flowers. Others left small tokens. All of them stood quietly and thought about what the monuments represented. Admiral Bora Kim visited the memorial on Earth on the 2-year anniversary of Hannah's death. She was 142 years old now, and her body was failing despite medical technology. Ambassador Miho Park came with her, almost as old and just as tired. They stood together in silence, looking at Hannah's name carved in stone.